How you doing, man? What's going on?
Stanley. Stanley?
No?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you for...
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host for today's ceremony, Dana Bash.
Good morning, everyone. I'm afraid to say that it's clearing up because I don't want to invite the rain to come back, but hopefully everybody is comfortable. Thank you so much for joining us as we gather to acknowledge our collective loss as a nation. I'm Dana Bash, and I will serve as your host on this solemn day for the opening ceremony of In America, Remember. I first want to thank the talented musicians joining us today, the String Queens who provided us with that beautiful prelude. And the Jason Max Ferdinand Singers, you're going to hear from them later in the program. Thank you for sharing all your gifts with us. So for the past 18 months, our lives have been spent in uncertainty and in turmoil as we navigated this unprecedented global pandemic. To date, COVID-19 has taken the lives of over 652,000 Americans. And that means 1 in 3 American families is missing a loved one because of this virus. Those statistics are hard to hear, but as we look at this vast field of flags around us, which is so remarkable, each flag honors an American life lost. And those statistics bring into sharp visual perspective, and they suddenly have more weight, those numbers, don't they? What makes it even harder is that this field is growing larger by the day as we continue to tally our losses to what are now mostly preventable deaths. Giving tangible shape to what has been lost and presenting the enormity of its scope and scale, it was the seed of inspiration for Suzanne Furstenberg, the artist behind this project. This, in fact, is the second time In America has been presented in Washington. The first exhibit was at the DC Armory Parade Grounds from October 23rd to November 30th of 2020. When the exhibit began, 219,000 flags were planted on the 4-acre field adjacent to RFK Stadium. 5 weeks later, Suzanne was forced to bring the exhibit to a halt because the daily death count surged over 2,000, and the space could no longer accommodate the growing toll. This installation, the largest public participatory exhibit to appear on the National Mall since the AIDS quilt, encompasses over 20 acres of land, and when it was installed in just 3 days, if you can believe that, looking at these incredible flags. And it was done by a dedicated team of landscape professionals who donated hundreds of man-hours to the creation of this art. People who visit the mall over the next 2 weeks will have the opportunity to personalize and dedicate flags to their own departed loved ones. Those unable to travel to Washington will have the same opportunity online. Each American we have lost was an individual with unique hopes, dreams, plans, a fully formed life, and will be recognized as such in this exhibit. So with that in mind, it is now my distinct honor to introduce the artist of In America Remember, Suzanne Brennan Furstenberg.
Thank you, Dana. You know, I am no longer the artist who created that art last fall. I'm not. Outrage, pure outrage, caused me to create that art. I was outraged at the devaluation of the lives of the elderly and lives of color. I was outraged that the deaths of our loved ones could become just a statistic. That outrage drove me to buy 250,000 flags before I had any place to put them. Thank God for Mayor Bowser and her administration. They did come through for me on that one. Thank you, thank you. That outrage has changed. It's become slowly extinguished. And I can't say that optimism takes its place, because I, like you, watch the nightly news, right? But I do have a sense of growing reassurance that we're going to get out of this, that humanity will win out in the end. And I think it's humanity, the power of the next generation, the promise of them, and the power of art that may just help us through. So humanity, as they will bring to this exhibition, last fall, people brought immense humanity to those flags. A CDC director came up from Georgia just to take an image of those flags because the director wanted to take that image back and use that picture of all those 260,000 flags to inspire her staff to do better. An ER doctor came in, he rushed in, and he created 12 flags for patients whom he had lost. And he planted those flags so lovingly, and then he dashed off to his next stint, his next shift at the emergency room. I had the honor of watching a deaf man go up to a middle-aged man who was sobbing, who had just lost his surrogate father the day before to COVID. And I got to watch the deaf man, through an interpreter, comfort that perfect stranger. That perfect stranger. So, watching all this humanity of theirs really made way for mine. And I hope that my next art installation might be one in which it inspires us to flip our cameras. You know, we've become such a nation of selfie takers, right? That selfie mentality just permeates our culture. And if we could just learn to flip those cameras and bring others into focus, just imagine. So what humanity means is really keeping everyone safe. I don't want to plant any more flags. We shouldn't have to plant flags. I want to just say a special thank you to Craig Rupert and to Chuck and to Mike and the whole Rupert team, because I couldn't have done this. I couldn't have done it alone. Craig knows how to use a downpour. Yesterday afternoon, when Alexandria was getting their record 4 inches of rain in an hour, we were planting one of the last sections of flags. Craig was out there with me. That's amazing. At noon each day, you'll see me change the number. I go by Johns Hopkins numbers to keep track of the cumulative death toll in America. I'll change the numbers and I'll plant the requisite flags. So we're planting a lot of flags. Did you know that we're planting them in the digital space as well? Equality is important. So many people do not have the resources, the time, the opportunity to come to Washington, D.C. to dedicate a flag for their loved one. So we're bringing the art to them. With all my thanks to Esri, to Jeremiah Lindemann and Esty Garrity and the whole team at Esri, I want to thank them for helping to bring this art into the digital sphere. People, wherever they are in America, if they've lost someone special, they can submit through our website, inamericaflags.org, a request to have a flag dedicated for their loved one. And that request will come to us. We'll print it on a piece of paper, and complete strangers, visitors to the mall, can come and write those flags for them. That's the digital sphere. This is the physical one. And I just want to give a shout out to GW University, because the faculty and staff there at GW, the faculty and students are helping to provide that critical link between the physical and the digital. They are going to be geolocating every dedicated flag in this art installation so that people around the country can see the flags that they requested, and so that everyone around the country can honor each other's loved ones. I want to share with you one quick story from last fall. One of the most poignant moments for me in that art, I was straightening the flags, as an artist always wants to do, keep them straight. And I saw in the distance, I saw a mother. She was walking very purposefully through the flags, a rather quick pace, and she was being followed by her daughter, a little 4 or 5-year-old. And this young girl kept saying to her, "Mommy, Mommy, wait, there's too many flags. There's too many flags. Mommy, wait, too many." 130,000 children in the United States have lost caregivers. You know, we are dealing day to day with how to manage the pandemic. It's the kids, though, that are going to take this with them for a lifetime. This is the baggage they're packing for their trip, right? Just a quick aside. Just as we were closing things for the pandemic, when the pandemic was first beginning, I was just finishing up the 7th installation of an art series called The Empty Fix. The goal of that series is to decrease the stigma surrounding drug addiction. To create that art, I traveled to 24 different states and interviewed hundreds of people who were suffering or recovering from drug addiction. And you know what they taught me? They taught me that at core, many, many people who suffer drug addiction have been made vulnerable because of psychological injury. We as Americans spend over $1 billion a year keeping our children physically safe. I mean, think about it. Open up the closets, the car seats, the booster seats, the water wings, the sports pads. We need to commit ourselves to their psychological safety. They have been devastated by this. One of the things we're doing on the In America team is we're providing lesson plans for teachers K through 12, so that they can help their students through this. This is compliments of a grant that was made by Lynn Brenner Gannick. She gave it to the American University School of Education, and their 2 phenomenal educators have created these lesson plans. They're on the AU website, and they are on the inamericaflags.org website. These lesson plans will help teachers to guide their students in learning how to express their emotions regarding this pandemic. The lesson plans will also help the students learn to listen with empathetic ears to the stories of others. And at the end, they will be prompted to do what I've done, right? Use your art to express your emotion about this. Those artistic expressions will be available. They can submit them anonymously to our website. And ultimately then, on the website, you'll see a map, and you can click on an icon and see where a kid from Kansas, or from Anchorage, or from wherever, has interpreted this art and how they have expressed themselves. That is going to be called The Pandemic Through Young Eyes, Art from the Next Generation. So, I'm an artist. Let me just take a moment to talk about art. Art has limitless opportunities because it can be interpreted in innumerable ways. So what that does is it takes the power of the art from the artist. The power is not in the hands of the artist, it is in the eyes of the beholder, right? So this art, you can interpret it in a multiple of ways. People will see it as data visualization, right? We have physically manifested each death so that we as a nation have a moment to pause and to reflect about what this says of us. Some people will see it in the most traditional sense as a memorial. What we are doing is we are recapturing the human dignity of each one of these people who have been compressed, who have been reduced to numbers. Taken holistically, this is a physical manifestation of empathy. It is time. We need a reminder of our shared commitment, not our shared commitment, no, but we all have a stake in this. We have a shared stake in our democracy, and hopefully this will give us a moment to pause and think about that. Art is not an elective. You may think it's an elective in school, but it's an imperative. We are all safely locked away in our ideologic echo chambers. And no matter what, words are not breaking down those doors. But art can filter in through the air vents. Art can slide in gently under the door. Art can unlock those doors from the inside. So, as an artist, I have to tell you that anytime someone comes up to me and says, I want to support your art, I believe in it, it is so validating. Being an artist is a lonely, tough existence sometimes. So I have to say a special thank you to Ron and Patricia Rappaport for their generous support. Thank you. I got notice of that on one of my tougher weekends. Amy Aronson, representing the Bernstein Family Foundation. Oh my God, you saved me. And every once in a while, she'll just send me a text message saying, Suzanne, breathe. And of course, Michelle Freeman of the Carl M. Freeman Foundation. Many thanks to everyone. So many people have donated. I'm so appreciative. Of course, I have to thank my family, Doug, Sam, Lindy, Drew. You know, they have accepted me disappearing at all hours for years as I have snuck off to spend time with my hospice patients and their families. They have continually lowered, sometimes precipitously, their expectations of my attention when it's been, stolen by art. So I want to just say thank you, because you have my back. We all have each other's backs, and when we have each other's backs, we can face outwards and direct our attention thus. So thank you. I just want to say, this is not my art. So I'm the person who just thought up this idea, right? This is the art of every single volunteer who helps somebody plant a flag. It's the art of every person who walks through here and just straightens a flag that might be out of place. It is the art of everyone who dedicates a flag. It's public art. It's our art. It is all of ours to mark this moment. So let me leave you with just a couple of quick requests. Please talk with strangers. We've gone around saying, oh my God, stranger danger. Please talk with strangers. As that deaf man did last fall, that's knitting community. Please invest in our youth, because they're going to need all the help they can get. We need our time and attention is best spent with them. And lastly, I just want to leave you with this thought. Patriotism, in its grandest sense, is not about jealously guarding our individual rights. It is about purposefully guarding the rights of others. Thank you.
like I need a second to breathe after that. Absolutely incredible. I don't think I've ever been this close to that much talent in my entire life. Wow. Thank you, Jason, Max, Ferdinand Singers. Just no words. So, as we digest that, I want to introduce our next speaker, who made history in March when she was sworn in as the first ever Native American cabinet secretary. As the head of the Department of Interior, she leads an agency of over 70,000 government employees. It encompasses 11 bureaus, and it includes the U.S. Geological Survey, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and the National Park Service. As secretary and as a member of Congress before that, she uses her platform to be a persistent advocate for America's indigenous communities. She's been a leading voice throughout the pandemic, encouraging COVID prevention and mitigation methods and delivering a consistent pro-vaccination message. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 54th Secretary of the Department of Interior, Deb Haaland.
Hello, everyone. Get vaccinated. Thank you so much for that very kind introduction, Dan. I really appreciate it. It's lovely to be here with you and with all of you. And I agree, the talent is off the charts here. So Suzanne, there you are, Suzanne. Thank you for your vision. Thank you for your compassion, for your words today. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for creating this space for people to mourn collectively. Thank you also to all the volunteers who made this project possible and continue to ensure that people across the country can be a part of it. And of course, thank you to the National Park Service staff who always deliver. Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be with you all today as we remember the parents, siblings, cousins, grandparents, dear friends, and loved ones we have lost to this terrible virus. A little over a year ago, I read an op-ed by Dr. Mickey McElia, a college professor, discussing the need for national mourning, not only for those who have died of COVID, but also for those they leave behind. At the time, fewer than 100,000 deaths had occurred. She argued that we didn't look at these deaths as a national loss. Loss is something we all experience because, of course, we're human. I am reminded of a friend of mine who called me out of the blue weeping one day. He was crying because they had to bury his family member without the traditional ceremonies that he and his community practice because of the pandemic. In the Pueblo of Laguna, where I'm from, we allow the time for the entire community to say farewell to a relative who has passed on, and we gather in our grief. Our desire to mourn together is profound and allows us to unite as a country around our common bonds and around our loss. It defies generational, political, and cultural boundaries, and the pandemic itself has hampered our ability to mourn in our own ways. Each white flag on this field represents someone's loved one. Each name written down on each white flag reminds us of the families that will live the rest of their lives without them. That includes the 37 members of the Interior Department family who we tragically lost to this virus as well. This public art display is an expression of our loss and gives everyone who comes here a chance to remember all those who have died and to say goodbye. It speaks to our desire to come together, to grieve, and to honor those who have passed. It is my hope that those who gather here, no matter where they are from, what their background, or if they have lost someone personally, feel deeply the loss that we have endured as a country. In some ways, we can honor those we have lost by putting new enthusiasm into urging that our communities and loved ones get vaccinated, by reminding people of the profound sacrifices that have been made. I will continue to do everything I can to encourage everyone to get vaccinated, as I hope you will, so that we can prevent more devastating loss, because we are in this together. Thank you all again so much, and thank you very much, Suzanne, for bringing this here for us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And I'm excited to now introduce our next presenter. He is an NAACP AXO Award winner and multi-poetry Grand Slam champion. His work has been seen on national broadcasts such as BET's Lyric Cafe. He is an author, a playwright, a teacher, a youth advocate. He uses his spoken word art to engage with his community and the world, and has been doing that since he was in high school. Here to present his original work, In America, Remember, please welcome Archie the Messenger.
Good morning. Good morning. I know the Creator has a plan because my grandfather was a praying man. Extending his arms with praying hands, this year my family praised and danced like we never danced before. Tick-tocks like sand clocks rushing quickly to the shore. We thank you for sunrises and open eyes to explore. We count our blessings and our losses for today and many more. I remember the hugs being a bit tighter and the sun being a bit brighter, the days moving a little slower, our smiles a bit wider. It's you that we remember. It's the love in December. It's the love that we remember. It's the way my grandfather looked at his wife. Her blush like sweet potatoes, cut finely with a knife. In America, we remember that the love is hidden somewhere between the stars and the stripes. Your memory keeps us rolling like a stone to a Christ, but sometimes our loved ones leave us quickly like a thief in the night, but God returns the favor when he lets there be light. Wakes us up in the morning and rocks us to sleep so tight that we remember to love our sister and love our brother. Though our skin may be different, our tears are the same color. We had to unmask our humanity, breathe empathy without vanity. We had to sanitize our sanity because lives were on the line. Because lives were on the line. We had to be socially distant but spiritually combined. And sometimes we have to just remember the good times, when it was okay to be kind, say hi. Because life was so precious, we had to rewind and be kind. We had to rewind to toast to glasses of wine, barbecues and good food and amusement parks with short lines. This life a metaphor, an amusement park with short rides. And every day we're just trying to get in line. We are just trying to ride all the rides. But it's just hard in this life because the love is hidden somewhere between the stars and the stripes. It was a good day. It was a good day. And sometimes selfies didn't have to be liked. It was a day when praying for you wasn't something that we typed. It was a day when praying for you wasn't something that we typed. But the love is hidden somewhere between the stars and the stripes. But we are the people united in a state of crisis with our children in sight. We have to teach them that in harmony we live, and together we fight because we love you. But today, we miss you. Today, we love you. I wish I could put arms around a bird to hug you. Grandma, I wish I could put my lips on a cloud to kiss you, because today we miss you, and there is not enough tissue for this issue, but you are with us, and we are always with you. We know the angels came to get you because they came with wings to fit you, but thank you for leaving us another room to get through. Thank you for showing us a little light and helping us get through. Lord, thank you for another day, another chance to make it right. We honor you with love, with these stars and these stripes. Thank you, Lord, for another day, another chance to make it right. Grandpa, I honor you today with these stars and these stripes, because I know the Creator has a plan. Because I know our Creator has a plan, because my grandfather was a praying man. Thank you.
Catch your breath moment. There really aren't any words to follow that. Just spectacular. Thank you so much, Archie the Messenger. Yes. The love is somewhere between the stars and the stripes. Never forget that. In 2005, our next speaker was tapped to be the director of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. And it was only a concept at the time. There was one staff member, no funding, or collections, or even a building site to speak of. And he embarked on an intrepid 11-year journey to bring the incredible museum that I'm looking at, and is right behind you all here. Take a second to turn around. That is certainly a stunning reality. And it's one of the most popular destinations here in Washington, D.C. In 2019, he was appointed Secretary of the Smithsonian Institution, the first African American to ever assume that role. As secretary, he oversees 19 museums, 21 libraries, the National Zoo, and numerous research and educational centers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to welcome Secretary Lonnie Bunch.
First, let's acknowledge what a sad day, but what a day of joy based on the poetry we just heard. Wasn't that spectacular? Today we gather to commemorate lost colleagues, friends, and family. Looking across a vast sea of flags covering the National Mall, it's hard to avoid being overwhelmed by the scope of the continuing heartbreak of this pandemic. Sometimes the magnitude of a tragedy can become so great that it's just an abstraction. But these flags help us get our arms around the magnitude of what we've lost. They remind us of the lives beyond the numbers. In some ways, I keep coming back to the AIDS Memorial quilt, which in my mind was one of the most amazing moments to help a nation remember and mourn. I hope that Susan's installation, which I believe will have the same kind of impact, because we need to remember and to mourn. Collectively, the flags are a sobering reminder of how much we've lost. But individually, they remind us of the importance of each life lived. The more than 6,500,000 people taken from us were ordinary and extraordinary. They come from all backgrounds, all faiths, from all ethnic and political categories. They're a cross-section of the nation. But candidly, standing in front in the shadow of the African American Museum, I'm reminded that so many communities of color were disproportionately affected by this horrible virus. And as I look at that building, it reminds me to make sure that those who were lost are never forgotten. Like many here, COVID took people close to me. And in my community, you say someone's name. So I say the name of William Gibson, who worked at that museum. I say the name of David Driscoll, an amazing artist and historian who changed the way we understand art. I say their names because they are more than statistics. They are people who loved and who were loved, and whose lives were transformative, and they've left a mark on us all. The National Mall, in some ways, is our greatest repository of collective memory, populated by numerous memorials and monuments celebrating significant Americans. But as essential as these monuments are, they tell an incomplete story. There are no memorials to survivors, no plaques detailing how communities suffered in the absence of their departed. It is up to historians, scholars, and artists like Suzanne to make sure that we understand this moment, that it is in context. This moment, this installation, helps to begin a period of us reckoning with that loss. By incorporating some of these flags in the Smithsonian's collections already, and in fact they're on display in the National Museum of American History, you will make sure through the Smithsonian that this will always be a part of our memory, of our landscape, and we'll remember this day, this installation, for as long as there's a Smithsonian. As we search for anything to give us comfort, to help us understand the incomprehensible, it's critical that we remember. Because while acknowledging grief is the first step, by remembering the lives, not just who we've lost, but how they've lived, will help us cry, but it'll help us begin to smile and find hope again. And I would believe there is nothing more powerful than a people, than a nation, steeped in its history and remembers. And as a historian, I've always believed that if we are to perfect this imperfect union, we must embrace our unvarnished history fearlessly and candidly. In other words, we must embrace the truth. And art can reveal truth in a visceral way, in ways others cannot. It helps us examine the complexity and nuance of this human condition. As this installation gives us a moment to reflect on all who were lost, let us also use it as an opportunity to examine how we can do better as a nation, how we must do better as a nation. Let us consider how we can better protect and care for one another. Let us remember this is about love. Our shared future, our ability to be a great nation, depends on our ability to remember and to take care of each other. Thank you very much.
did you get that high? That's incredible. So it is now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. Like so many mayors across this country, Muriel Bowser has been on the front lines of this pandemic. Leading any city means making really tough decisions every day, especially now, balancing the physical health, the mental health of DC residents, and the economic health of its businesses. Of course, unlike other mayors, DC has no larger state to support it. So she and the rest of the DC government were on their own in navigating the uncharted waters of the pandemic. Even after suffering the heartbreak of a COVID-related loss in her own family, she stayed focused on the people she represents in the nation's capital. It was Mayor Bowser who arranged the first iteration of this incredible art installation to find a home at the DC Armory, and she has continued to show her unfailing support as In America Remember took shape. We are pleased to have her with us today. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser.
Good morning. And I want to thank you, Dana, for that introduction and for being part of today's events and for all that you have done throughout this pandemic to ensure that Americans had all the information that they need. I want to acknowledge and thank Secretary Deb Haaland, who is also here with us this morning, for her kind words and for her leadership around our country. And Lonnie Bunch, we thank you for all that the Smithsonian means to our city and our nation in recording our history right here on this, our national mall. I also want to acknowledge and thank members of my administration who have joined us today and represent 37,000 DC government workers who have been focused for nearly 2 years on our response and recovery from this pandemic. I couldn't be more proud of their efforts, and I know that all that they have done have saved lives in Washington, D.C. Suzanne, I couldn't have agreed more with your words. We are grateful for this exhibit and for the exhibit that was on display at RFK Stadium last fall. And we are grateful that through art and public art, the people's art, we can demonstrate our collective grief, but also our collective vision and commitment to crushing this virus. I remember when we came together last November, Suzanne, you then called on similarly Americans to care for each other and to show compassion. We heard those words again today from our poet. I have said throughout this pandemic how proud I am that DC residents have stood shoulder to shoulder together to show compassion for each other. And since we came together last, science has delivered for us a new tool that can help us crush this virus and care for each other in another way. And that's 3 safe and effective vaccines. We know that about a month and a half after we met outside of RFK Stadium, the vaccine was approved. Many of the first people to get vaccinated were the healthcare heroes that took care of our communities during the darkest and scariest days of this pandemic. The doctors went from room to room in overfilled ICUs. Nurses traveled across the country to overwhelmed hospitals and worked long hours caring for patients who were scared and separated from family and friends. And the support staff at our hospitals kept cafeterias open, made sure that fresh sheets were on the beds, and that there were rarely time for them to even take a moment for their own mental health or their own families. We made sure in Washington that we had all the preparation that we needed to give our healthcare professionals time to get ready to take care of our sickest patients. And sadly, we again see in parts of our country overwhelmed ICUs, overburdened health professionals. And we know that we can change the trajectory of those experiences. And in those early days of vaccinations, you will remember for most people, it was difficult to get a vaccine. Supply of the vaccine fell far short of the demand. You will remember that people were desperate to get their shot. Family members were logging into vaccine sites from thousands of miles away to try to get appointments for their parents and grandparents. People were lingering in pharmacies and grocery stores hoping to get an extra dose of the vaccine at the end of the day. Regular people were tuning into CDC meetings and FDA meetings to learn when new vaccines might get approved. We fast forward to today, and any person in America who is 12 years or older can walk into pharmacies, clinics, and vaccines and get a free, safe vaccine. And so today I stand before you in 610,000 flags, more than 1,100 representing D.C. residents. And I come with the same ask. You heard it from Deb Haaland, and I'll repeat it again. Get vaccinated, take the vaccine, but more specifically, get your children vaccinated. Get them the vaccine. There are hundreds of thousands of flags here that represent people who never had the opportunity to get vaccinated. And now we know that since the vaccine became available, so has misinformation. And some of the flags here represent lives lost because of misinformation that got to people before the vaccine ever had a chance. But we can still save lives, and there are still too many Americans, especially young Americans, who are not yet vaccinated. And so I appreciate this exhibit for so many reasons. Today, we have a pop-up vaccination site that's supported by Safeway, one of our trusted vaccine partners in Washington, D.C. And we want to encourage everyone to reach out to family members. Just this morning, my mother sent me a text that she had been texting one of our family members every single day to get the vaccine. And she received a copy of her vaccine card today by text message. So each of us, no matter who we are or where we are, we can encourage others to get vaccinated. I want to again thank Suzanne for not only putting this installation together, but creating resources for educators to help young people nationwide process the magnitude of this experience. Just last week, I was lucky to be with President Biden, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, and Secretary Cardona at one of our middle schools here in Washington, D.C. I've spent the last several months reminding everybody that Washington, D.C. is open. Our National Mall is open, our museums are open, our parks and restaurants are open. And we've been able to do that because D.C. residents and our businesses have made tremendous sacrifices to allow us to bend the curve. I'm also proud to say that D.C. public schools are open, full-time, in person, 5 days a week. Last week, President Biden went to Brooklyn Middle School, and I shared with the kids something that I didn't think my own staff knew who was helping in the organization, that I went to that school, to Brookland. It was an elementary school then, and I was happy to return with the president and a lot of happy kids and teachers. They weren't just happy because the president was there. They were happy to be in class. They were happy to be with their colleagues. They were happy to be with their teachers. And they were happy to be learning new things firsthand, things that they couldn't learn through a screen. At the school, President Biden, first of all, he acknowledged all the hard work that D.C. Public Schools and our staff have done to get children back in school, where we all know they learn best. But he was introduced by Elijah Poole. And Elijah asked the president, why me? Why was I selected to introduce you to have this great honor? And he answered his own question by saying, why not me? And today I want to encourage everyone to see themselves in Elijah and to see what he was able to see. He saw how important his role is, even as a 12-year-old, and how important he was to his family and friends. And that's why he and his mom made the decision to get him vaccinated. For our friends and family members who are not yet vaccinated, know that your life is precious. Your life is worth protecting. And you have the tool to make sure that you can prevent your family and friends and your colleagues and people who you may not even think care heartbreak at your loss. So even though this exhibit has moved from RFK, I am reminded of an observation on tragedy that RFK himself made that applies to this moment. He said, "Tragedy is a tool for the living to gain wisdom, not a guide by which to live." We have experienced an overwhelming amount of tragedy during this pandemic, but today we have the knowledge and resources and tools to prevent others from experiencing the loss that each of these flags represents. So let's keep pushing. Now is not the time to give up on our fellow Americans. And in that spirit, I want to end by thanking all of the volunteers for DC's COVID Community Corps who are out in the neighborhood every single day talking to DC residents about their fears and concerns, one conversation at a time. Let our country experience this collective grief and mourning, but also the call to action to crush this virus.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bowser. And thank you to all of the speakers and the performers you've heard this morning. And, you know, we started and it was drizzling, and now the sun is coming out. So let's just hold on to that and just call it a metaphor, okay? So thank you for coming. And as a reminder, this exhibit that you're looking at will be open to the public daily through October 3rd. We hope that you encourage your friends, your families, your neighbors, your colleagues to visit and to take part in the exhibit. Or you can direct them to www.inamericaflags.org, where they can experience and participate in the exhibit virtually. I would now like to ask Suzanne Furstenberg back to the stage and give some parting thoughts to close out the program. Suzanne.
Thank you, Dana. Thanks so much to the mayor and to all the speakers here today. And thank you for spending your time here. You bring this art meaning. I invite you to walk now with me amongst the flags. Just look at one flag. Think about the concentric circles of grief that flag represents. The family, the neighbors, the coworkers, the faith community. And just take a moment to absorb all that grief and then lift your gaze. This is a moment for us all to pause and reflect on what this slow motion tragedy that we are living. But you'll look across the field and you'll see other people doing the same thing. Because as other speakers have said, we are all in this together. So please do join me out in the flags as the Jason Max Ferdinand singers sing us out. Thank you.